Hello there guys, it's Joey and this is a requested spell range for the store, and this is a Fire and Ice, and this is Game of Thrones inspired items, the spell range that was requested, that I create the energies around the Mother of Dragons and the King of the North, Jon Snow and Daenerys Targaryen. And with this being a book and television show inspired energy, it took me a little bit longer to get to a place where I was like knowing what energies I wanted. I had an idea of aesthetic, but there were certain items that absolutely had to embody the energies, such as the smudge and the salts and the spell oils in particular. The candles can radiate the energies of the ice side or the fire side quite easily with the aesthetic, but the smudge and the oils and the salts in particular, with them being one energy, had to sort of conjoin and present an energy, a reason of being, if you like. I'm going to talk a little bit about this at the beginning of the video before we get into the actual meat of what the items are, if you like. But for this creation process, basically, because I create magical items, the idea of magical items is not necessarily that they look pretty. Now, a lot of my magical items do look pretty, and they have a shimmy aesthetic, basically. I like things to be visually appealing. I think it helps with the magical process. But first and of most paramount importance is the energetic job that the spell range do. They have a purpose, they have a magical resonance, they vibrate, they have a soul, they have a song, and a song of fire and ice. It's kind of a nice segue, I guess. So when we're looking at incorporating modern archetypes, modern stories, if you will, into magic, we have to basically create a bridge. In a lot of the crossover pieces that I do to celebrate certain stories, it's not a difficult process, such as the Alice in Wonderland. We had the spell orb recently. I've done a few bits around Alice in Wonderland, and I've done a few bits around Labyrinth and Maleficent and so forth. But those energies have a very direct tie to a more pagan line, a more fey line, and whereas magic very much does exist in the universe that George R.R. Martin created, it's perhaps a little bit more of a sidestep because it's such a high fantasy world. It's a very self-contained world. It's not, say, Labyrinth or Alice in Wonderland, where you can journey to that sort of place from here to there. It's a separate world. So we have to really encompass the rules of that world overlapping with the rules of our world, if that's making a whole lot of sense. I hope I'm making sense. And it's basically finding the connectivity between them. And so the focus is very much on fire and ice in the elemental aesthetic, and I think that makes a lot of sense. The books are divided between these two characters, one who represents fire, Daenerys Targaryen with her dragon energies, and then Jon Snow, who represents the ice, the Starks of Winterfell. I won't do any spoilers in this video about books or TV shows, as well as, direwolf energy and being in the north, confronting the cold realities up there. And of course, the thing that unites them being White Walkers, which we presume is what they are going to come together in the end to fight. So the aesthetic, therefore, for the cauldrons, for example, is that they are both in white cauldrons for that purpose, because that represents the coming together of these two characters. It provides a thread across. So both cauldrons, as you will see, are white to represent the White Walkers, to represent the duality between not only fire and ice, which are natural opposites, if you like, in terms of elemental magic, But then these two people, these two elemental energies, this fire and ice, come together in a song, a dance, a magical coming together, possibly a physical coming together, we don't know yet, and beating back death, basically. Death will be walking. So throughout this entire set is an energy of life and life force and the coming together of masculine and feminine energies. And the ones that combine in particular have a very strong coming together element. And we'll talk about that more with Smudge, and I'll probably do that last. I think we will start off with the ones that are more aesthetically easy to see. So the required items, the requested items were requested. There was requested that we had 2 pillars. I did 4 votives, which was an accident actually, but lady knows that I've done it and is fine with it, so we're alright. And then 2 spell cauldrons and 2 oils and 1 smudge and 1 blessing salts. The blessing salts I'm super pleased with because it took me a little while to figure out how I wanted it to look aesthetically, because we had just 1 blessing salt. So I think we'll start over here with the pillars. Going off the edge of the map a bit here, never mind. Right, so if I move these things, can we get a better shot? We'll have a look at ice first. Are we going to be able to do this, or are you going to be too focused on the votive? How about there, if I just move that out of shot slightly. So this is the ice pillar. The scent has been chosen very specifically to represent ice, but also to represent the energies of Jon Snow. So Jon Snow is a character from the books who represents ice in A Tale of Fire and Ice, if you didn't know that already. And his character is not particularly cold. He's quite thoughtful and caring and family orientated. The Starks all tend to be very close in bonds of family, and he has a hard time, but he is a loving character, and you know, throughout the progress of the books he's well liked and connects with friends and lovers and alike. So there had to be an energy, a slight warmth in ice. It couldn't just be literally what we might consider ice to be in terms of the element, where it would just be, you know, cold. So it had to have a bit more of a warmth, it had to have a bit more of a personality. The scent lends itself to Jon Snow a little bit more than the aesthetic. The aesthetic is obviously a snow and is a little bit more of a grey moving through with the tapering off, so it has a change of colour. So I think the grey works well with the direwolf imagery, and but we've still got the ice in there and the snow in there as well. So I hope you can get a good look at that. And then we have the pillar for Daenerys, which is very much it just makes me think of, you know, dragon fire, basically dragon fire and destruction. And you know, the way that the fire and the flame and the smoke has actually moved through the wax has come out incredibly well. And there's a real interesting dynamic here between the pillars, because I hope you can see alright. I always worry about this and then it comes out okay in the render. The pillar for Daenerys is much more fiery, it's much more destructive, so it would be like dragon fire blowing everything up, whereas Jon Snow's fighting style, for example, would not be quite so explosive. His fighting style would be with men and armies and perhaps the direwolf and so on and so forth, but it would be a little bit more contained than the explosive nature of Dragonfire, which can just blow everything up and be very, very destructive. And I think the physical aesthetic has come across quite well for that. You can see on the top here for, hopefully, yeah, there we go, the Dragonfire element on the top of the pillar. Okay, and that translates also into the votives. So this is the votive for fire, and this is the votive, come on, focus please, please focus, there we go, for ice. And both have actually got a kind of a grey undertone, interestingly enough, in the votives themselves. But if you can see, there you go, you can see the little bit of red moving through here, through this. They didn't have the same colours in them, so it's interesting that they've actually come out quite close to one another in the votive form, because the colours that went into it were completely different. So it's very interesting how that they've come out like they want to be together, and it's kind of nice in a way. It's kind of a deeply moving style thing. Then we have the spell cauldrons that want to work together but not be the same. So, you know, complementary was the request. So I've already said, you know, the base is white for the White Walker energy, White Walker being the big threat, the thing that is catapulting these two characters together. The fire and ice come together to defeat the White Walkers, and what is, you know, the death of man if they are not defeated. And so I really liked the idea of the unification being through the White Walkers, that you know, that even if they could, the two characters could theoretically squabble about this, that and the other, which is unlikely given how they're both quite regal and quite accommodating, but even if they were to squabble, that's less likely given the White Walkers. There's that unification element. And so then the cauldrons again reflect the aesthetic, the strong aesthetic of fire and ice. I'm hoping that the glare that I see will be gone in the render and you'll be able to get a good look. And I really just wanted the spell cauldrons along with the pillars and the candles to really harmonise around the very, very strong aesthetic of fire and ice. The aesthetic of the blessing salts actually mirrors one of the movie posters, or TV posters, I suppose, technically. There are some, I can't remember which season it is, but there are season posters where there is a red and a blue hue over the profile pictures of the main characters, and therefore the blessing salts sort of took on this aesthetic. There is one of each of the flowers, like there is in the spell cauldrons, to represent the two people involved. And I think these flowers have worked really well, because I felt like there was flower symbology in the books. John's mother is presented in the prophecy as being a white flower in a wall of ice, I believe. I believe I'm describing that right. So it has a good energy of symbology, the opening up of flowers that reveal themselves, and the blossoming of characters. And then the spell salts have a high shimmy shimmy, which I hope will come through on camera, but it's a combination of the two colours that I took great pains to make sure that the two colours came together in this spell salt, but did not merge into one mass colour, so they're defined. The two colours are present here in the spell salts together, but they are not merging into one mess. It's two very, very separate colours, which took some doing and some experimentation, but we got there. And I'm really pleased with how the spell salts came out, actually. So that's the spell salts. Then we have the oils. Now the oils are really, really beautiful, if I do say so myself. I really, really like the oils. So this is the oil for Mother of Dragons. The oils allow for a little bit more of a movement and a fluidity, and because, for obvious reasons, so because they allow for a fluidity of movement and motion, that allows an aesthetic which presents these characters in movement, which I think really, really lends itself to allowing a magical presence that is synonymous with a dance and a physical prowess of the characters themselves. So you'll see the difference between the two oils as well in a minute. So Daenerys is a little bit more willing to take the role of sovereign. She's a little hesitant at the very, very beginning, but it quickly overcomes it. There's quickly a sense of that she is the dragon. She quickly becomes a Khaleesi. So she becomes sovereign, and that just increases and increases and increases. So her motion has been quite fluid, has been quite fast, has been quite empowering, has been quite building momentum is where I'm going with it. So there's been a lot of motion forward, and both characters have had quick amounts of success, but I think Daenerys is far more regal in her aspirations, and she's far more took control and charge on a much larger scale. And obviously the dragons lend themselves to that. That's a winning card as far as power play is concerned. But Mother of Dragons is definitely a fiery, heat-filled spell oil, full of determination, full of sovereignty, and full of breaking down any barriers that stand in the way of success. And I'm going to show you the Jon Snow oil separately, and then I'll show you them side by side. So this is for the King of the North. Again, the aesthetic is there of the ice, the paler, and the tranquility. He's a lot calmer, and the spell oil reflects that. He doesn't naturally assume to power. He kind of has this energy where I think he would be happier in a place of power. He would be a natural fit to be a ruler, but it's not necessarily something that he craves with every inch of his body. He's kind of like the reluctant leader, and he just wants to connect, really. And all of the scenes where I think about him rising through the ranks and becoming who he is to be, he does have a sense of pride which gets hurt, the same as Daenerys has a sense of pride, but he tends to sort of tranquilly, well, not always tranquilly because he does lose his temper, but he tends to sort of soldier through setbacks a lot stronger. He's less volatile, and he just sort of gets put into difficult situations and he makes the best of it, where I think as Daenerys sort of blows everything up when she gets put in situations that she will not stand for. So the differences being, for example, when Jon was told by his commander that he had to kill him and become a wildling to survive, to get back to the wall, that's a situation which is pretty horrifying, and against what Jon would have wished, but he went through with it because he was commanded to do so by a man he respected, and he sort of infiltrated and did the little spy thing, and was very, very good at gaining trust and things, but then he upheld his honour and went back as he promised. And whereas Daenerys at one point in the TV show gets taken as her Carl is dead to where the wives are taken, and rather than accepting that role and slowly building up to escaping or whatever, she blows everything up. So huge spoilers. Sorry about that, but I guess if you're watching the video, then you're aware there will be spoilers in here about the storyline. And so she refuses to go with the flow at all. She goes in, assesses the situation, and gets herself out of it pretty quickly by blood and flame, basically, rather than a cool, level-headed thinking. So Jon's energies are a sort of steady, cooler, calmer, more reasoned, more logical. There's still the passion, there's still the sovereign, but I think he's the opposite. He's the other side of the coin. He's the cooler head, and it's why they're perfectly matched, to be honest. They complement each other so well. So, last but not least is the Smudge, which does not uphold an aesthetic of either or, because I felt that the scent was far more important with the Smudge, in particular the energy and smell, than the physical aesthetic of the Smudge. So the the energetic temple that comes off the smudge is for sovereignty, it is for a connectivity, it is for building a home. There is a definite feeling with both of these characters of being alone, that they haven't got real family ties. John starts off with perhaps a stronger family tie, but he is made to feel like the outsider. And the siblings still love him, and there is still a deep connectivity there. But then he is sort of goes off into the world because he is an outsider and he can't really stay with the family and fight with the family. So there is that separateness, and then of course he loses much of his family, not all, but much. And so there is that longing and that yearning for family and that connectivity and that good home base. Daenerys starts off the story only with her brother, who is a manipulative and unpleasant individual who believes that he should be ruling and doesn't last very long and treats Daenerys like a piece of meat. And then goes into a new family with a Carl, which starts off not so great, but she takes to it very, very quickly, and they become part of her, and that environment becomes her home, only for that to fall apart and be taken away from her. And so I think there is a deep sense within both of these characters of a need to connect, a need for home, and the sovereignty aspect, wanting to rule and wanting to command, is more about changing the world around them for the better, for the loved ones, for their sense of purpose, and to connect to others. Daenerys has shown this through freeing the slaves, and that they all call her mother, and John has shown this through his many relationships, closer bonded relationships with friends, and indeed some of his family members later on. So the smudge is about creating that temple of home, that temple of connectivity, that temple of personal sovereignty within one's home sense, and it has a very, very lovely vibration. It's very cleansing for the home as well. Okay, so that's all of it for Fire and Ice. I hope you like it, and many blessings.